Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the November 18th. That is not the right date. November 22nd, 2021 Grants Pass City Council Workshop. DJ, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it looks like everybody else is here in the room, and then we have DJ Fazer on the phone today. And I'm looking, we were going to do Caveman Plaza first because we're expecting a guest. Is that still the plan? Okay, well, we will just go ahead with the Caveman Plaza discussion first. Hi, Brad.
Good morning. So actually all three topics today, I think staff's perspective on this anyway, wow, we got a live mic today, is to just kind of a quick orientation and then, turn it over to you, Mayor, and the council. We really don't have a lot of in-depth on any of these. This particular one, there was a more comprehensive discussion 3 or 4 weeks ago about Caveman Plaza, and this takes a couple of those slides, but it's staff's understanding that the main subject today is to discuss opportunities and approaches to talk about a potential working group, creation of a working group that might be formed in response to the fact that the project is in the urban renewal district and has had some discussion about what are the future highest and best uses for this property. And the relationship to the council goals is to encourage economic opportunities, facilitate sustainable and manageable growth. So this is a 3-star priority in the current strategic plan. It's a multi-tenant building there at Southwest 4th and Southwest G. As of about 5 or 6 months ago, when this topic was on your last workshop, there were 10 active tenants and I think 3 or 4 vacancies. I think that's still relatively accurate, but I just wanted to clarify we didn't verify that for this presentation. The owner is BB Holdings Oregon 2 LLC, which has been represented by Travis Boersma. Redevelopment potential of the site was discussed July 26th, and there was no decision at that workshop. This is the project as it appears in the urban renewal plan. This is number 12, and it states that it's an area that needs improvement. Buildings and surrounding parking are not consistent with the balance of the historic district. There are some successful retail outlets in the plaza. The potential exceeds what's currently there. Retail construction costs estimated $140 per square foot. That also is a figure that comes from the 2016 urban renewal plan, so has no doubt seen some inflation. Incentives provided by the agency could influence the property owner's future development of this site. So that's the current adopted plan project description. Just showing you the zoning in the area, central business district zoning all around the property. The lot size, 2.85 acres. The building is about 55,000 square, just under 56,000 square feet, with an appraised value of about just under 2.8 million. Built in '65. You can see the main impact on this property from a redevelopment, well, not the main, but one of the key factors is this cross-hatched area on the top, which is property owned by the railroad, which does come right up to the building along the rear of it. There are utilities to the site. There is a sewer main that does currently run under the building that in a redevelopment situation would be just a utility issue that would have to be addressed. We've talked about a couple of different approaches to redevelopment at the staff level. It's owned by a private property, so the current private owner can develop the property on their own. They can work with the agency, the Urban Renewal Agency, to redevelop the property. They could sell the property to a developer for future development, or the agency could purchase the property from a willing seller using urban renewal funding, and then, do an RFP. So there is currently $1 million allocated to the Town Center Plaza project in the urban renewal plan, and other sources would have to be, looked at. Obviously, if you went with affordable housing, there's mixed use opportunity there. And then, our staff resources. So it's our understanding we don't really have a call to action for the council at this point. It's kind of presenting some of these alternatives for you to think about, creating an urban renewal agency committee to identify some of the issues because of the complexity around these existing built-out sites. It will help to have a deep dive into all the different redevelopment issues, financing issues, use issues, that would maybe be helpful to have a committee to look at. Could also just create a Caveman Plaza task force that might be a little more focused in on just that site as compared to maybe like that neighborhood, if you will, or that block level, if you did an urban renewal agency committee. Could just move this to another workshop, engage the property owner to assess their interest in redevelopment, direct staff to prepare an RFP or other. So that's what we have as background for you.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, the idea behind this, council, just came out of our agenda setting meeting where I think you had asked to have a workshop both on the Town Center Plaza and maybe at one of the other projects, and it was kind of like, rather than have these workshops with the full council, maybe we should just have a subcommittee or task force, whatever you want to call it, to kind of take a deeper dive into some of these and do some of the background work before we get it to the workshop point. So, do you have any questions for Brad? Joel?
So parking has been a limiting factor downtown. What percentage of the parking is included here in the property called the Plaza as a percentage of the downtown parking?
Oh, as a percentage of the downtown parking, I do not know the answer to that.
Is it significant or insignificant?
Well, I mean, this property probably comes pretty close with the existing uses to meeting the code as far as on-site parking. Well, actually, I should take that back. The code doesn't require any off-street parking in the central business district. So even having one parking space exceeds the code. But if you were to look at, the soccer use inside there and look at some of the other retails, add those up, and if it was in a commercial district, what would the parking be? I think they're probably, right there at what that off-street parking count would be. But, okay. It's not open to the rest of the downtown, so we really wouldn't think about it as a percentage of the downtown parking because it's not public.
So under the current ownership, is it open to anybody that wants to park there for downtown?
Well, no, technically it's private property and it's signed, I believe, that way. And, not to say that people aren't doing that, but it technically is parking that is only for that Town Center Plaza use.
And if it was in the public arena, then it would be parking for everybody, is that correct?
Well, yes. I mean, if there was a public, in lots of central business districts, you do have, either a garage, or in that situation, they're usually public, or if it's owned by the city, that could be looked at. But until that ownership changes, then it would be deemed private.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brad? Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Could you, or maybe Aaron, or maybe someone on council remind me, earlier this year when we were in strategic planning, and this topic came up, I don't remember where it came from. I don't remember who was championing this idea. So I'm just trying to get clarity around where that started.
There was some general discussion, and there's been general discussion about the Caveman Plaza with council for a number of years because of its potential impact that it has and its opportunities that it has. I believe through strategic planning, it might have been the council president that sort of championed this one on there. It could have been another council member, and I don't want to speak for the council president, but he may be able to speak up as if this was one that he brought forward. But it was something that was brought forward and prioritized through the strategic planning process.
Yeah, DJ's out there.
Yeah, I'm here. I did champion it for strategic planning this year, and the goal was specifically to investigate urban renewal dollars and the potential to be spent on the urban or on the Caveman Plaza.
Great, thank you.
Rick?
Brad, I believe a couple of years ago too, the council designated this to be in the enterprise zone. Is that correct?
In what, I'm sorry?
I think Aaron has the answer for it.
Yes, this was approved in part of the enterprise zone. It was an enterprise zone that was changed sort of like from a rural enterprise zone to more of an urban enterprise zone in 2018. So it provided for the longevity being longer than a normal enterprise zone that you see today, which is 3 to 5 years with different extensions. This enterprise zone was for a 15-year enterprise zone, which is tax abatement for improvements on the site associated with full-time employee increases.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, then Vanessa.
So just verifying what I think is probably true, Brad, if someone else were to buy that property, or for that matter, if the existing owner decided to remove that building that's on it, because there's no, in the CBD, there's no parking requirements for any businesses or properties, a new owner, or even, like I say, even the existing owner, could potentially build on that property right to the sidewalks and not have a single parking space. Is that correct?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yeah, thank you, Brad. In July, we heard the downtown report from, I believe it was Mr. Love, and he indicated that in order for us to have any idea if mixed use can be successful in downtown, that we would need a really extensive mixed use development study, really encompassing study to my understanding. So it seems really preliminary that a potential funding source would be our affordable housing fund when we don't even know if that could pencil out. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I wouldn't interpret the comment at the end of this PowerPoint that mentions affordable housing to be specific to the city's affordable housing fund for SDCs, if that's what you're referring to, Councilor. I think it was just at a higher level, some of the tax credit or other state level or foundation level pots of money that are designated for affordable housing, just on a broader level. As you've heard, the funding for these projects is multi-layered. It's not that there's ever just one funder. So I think the intent there was just if there was a mixed-use project and if it had some kind of housing component. Now it could be because there is a project in the urban renewal plan that talks about affordable housing. So I think that was the pot of money that we're referring to in terms of the city's control, would be that urban renewal project that is for affordable housing. Does that get to your question?
That is exactly what I was asking. It is indicating the URA's housing allocation program.
Right.
And it seems very preliminary to suggest that as a funding source when we don't even know if that's possible. That's my concern. Maybe it's not a question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is an adopted project in the urban renewal plan. So I think it's feasible in as much as any other project is that there's, it's there as an identified project. You wouldn't have to amend the urban renewal plan to spend money on affordable housing in the urban renewal district. So to that degree, I think it was listed, but you're right, it would require much more discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Valerie?
Yeah, I remember it kind of coming and going. I mean, obviously, there was a point in time when Travis said he was going to sell it, and I think that's when the interest was there, because we know that that is a huge piece of our downtown that if it was going to be sold, we wanted to, be available either to work with a new owner, or that was when, it seems to me that was a strategic planning when some of the new counselors were really gung-ho about that possibility. So that's where I think I remember it coming from, was that when the new council got together and heard that Travis was considering selling it, that's where the energy came from. And then Travis did come at a later date and say, well, I'm not interested in selling it. And so then that was kind of dead unless he wants to work with us. And so I guess that's, to me, where I'm at, is like, I don't want it as a city take it on. I don't think that's our business. It is our business to work with somebody, and there is a lot of opportunity as it is in the urban renewal district. But personally, I would need to know, is the current person interested in that, or is that something that's out in the future, or because I think we're just kind of in limbo until we know. We can talk about it until we're blue in the face, but we can't, I mean, personally, I do not want to buy that and take that on as a city by myself, on our own.
I think we're kind of missing the point and getting into the weeds here on this specific project, because I think the purpose of today's discussion was to decide if we want to create a small group to investigate some of these things, rather than having, an open discussion about property that we don't own and may or may not be for sale, and owners who may or may not be interested in working with us, but to take projects that the city has some interest in and getting a small group going to work on those behind the scenes. So I think the scope of this, the committee could be designated specifically for this particular project. You might also have it look into other properties. We've talked about the pool, we've talked about hotel, different things, that the city might be interested in working on. So if you guys are all going to go, straight into Caveman Plaza, I can't really stop you, but that is not what we were intending for today's discussion. So, Rob.
Yeah, I kind of thought that today's discussion was kind of focused on Caveman Plaza, but not necessarily in a long-term way, but what could be a next step. For 11 months, basically, it's, been, on our list of priorities. We've done very little about that as of yet. As I mentioned before, we know that, I'm going to guess, I think, Joel, you asked, and Travis is here, he can probably tell us exactly, but if you subtracted the parking that the businesses that are in that plaza actually use, that plaza probably provides around 100 parking spaces that are used by the general public. But again, I could be corrected on that. That's a ballpark. And there's nothing to stop the current owner or a potential future owner of eliminating all of that, depending on, it wouldn't necessarily be a smart move, but so if we as council feel that that is a strategic property, which if you look at a bird's eye view map of Grants Pass or our downtown, it's obvious that it is strategically located. I think we would ideally like to have some influence on the direction that the property goes. I'm pretty sure that I speak for the entire council when I say none of us really have the expertise or the creativity to really have a vision as to where we should, where we want that property to go, other than the fact that we would acknowledge that it's pretty strategic. So my thinking was, when we talked about forming a task force, is that we've got to decide what our next step would be there. In other words, and I believe, and I'm just going to, Travis is here and hopefully we'll hear from him, with us or separately from us, he needs to decide how he feels about that property. He was offered, years ago, up to a $12 million tax abatement to develop it, and which seemed like he was going to do, but it didn't happen, and I guess priorities may have changed, so that's not a priority for him, at least him being the sole developer. But I'd like to, today, I'd like to hear from Travis, if he's comfortable, or the rest of us, what would be our next step? I think, to me, our next step is forming a task force to say, of downtown stakeholders, or citywide stakeholders for that matter, what would be a really good use for that property? What kinds of developers are qualified to move it in that direction? I would hope that if we had a task force, that Travis take an active role in that. He would be a member of it. I mean, he owns property nearby and he's a stakeholder in the city. So I would hope that he would be a part of the task force, but we would then, hearing from the task force, then we as a council could decide, these ideas kind of sound good. Do we want to actually seek a developer who could manifest that goal? But I think that, I don't, and I don't know if any of the other councils really have a clear vision as to what exactly that property should be, but I'd like to hear from council, and I'd like to hear from Travis, what role should we play in forming a task force to take the next step? And then council can decide, hey, maybe we want to buy the property, maybe we don't. Maybe we just want to incentivize it for Travis or a future owner. And maybe if the incentives are such, it becomes attractive to Travis to hold on to it and work to help develop it. Maybe it doesn't. But I think these are the next steps we need to figure out. Otherwise, we just kind of have to drop it from our radar because we don't have enough information to take it anywhere. So anyway, thank you.
DJ, then Brian.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate on what Sarah said and also what Rob said. I think putting together a task force with experts and stakeholders is a great idea. We had talked about this at the agenda setting meeting with the mayor and Rob and myself, and we even expanded the idea of a task force to even have sort of a general urban renewal focus, but then give them a schedule or order of projects that we wanted to look at. Caveman Plaza being the primary. There were some ideas about the Redwood Towers being talked about as well with urban renewal dollars. Caveman Pool, we can entertain that list if we'd like to, but I'm in favor of getting the experts to the table. Certainly want to talk to the owner of the property and see what the next best move is. But I think that as far as proper procedure goes, and evaluating what we should do, task force with experts at the table would be the next step. Thanks.
Brian.
Yeah, thanks. I got a question for you, Brad. One of the big concerns, or I guess points of interest in this property revolves around parking. And you elaborated that there's no parking requirements currently in the CBD. And I'm wondering if council so chose, if there was some way for us to craft a code amendment that would help alleviate the risk of that property being sold to somebody else, or if to take that concern of the parking risk away. Is there a way for council to craft some sort of code amendment that would help to address that?
Yeah, there is, of course. Local parking is completely under the authority of cities. There really isn't a ORS or other state statute that kind of addresses that. You see fee in lieu of agreements that are sometimes put in downtown areas, or change the ratio, compared to other types of commercial development. Sometimes you see just a different ratio overlaid for downtown. Sometimes you see what we have, which is none, but and then of course we do have that parking study that was completed a couple of years ago that has some more information about that overall ratio for downtown. I mean, so yeah, I think there's different approaches that could be taken to look at parking in the code. There's also just agreements that but that's usually only opened up at the time of a sale or a land use action. That would be another potential avenue.
Okay, so thank you for that. So in theory, like, say you have a property in the CBD, and, I'm just shooting from the hip here, but like, say we make a code amendment that says for a property above a certain size, it has a parking requirement. Is that something we could do? If like it's above a certain acreage, or can it be done by size?
It could.
Okay.
It could, yeah. I mean, I think there's a number of different approaches that could be taken. Anything at this point would have to be analyzed in the bigger picture, I think.
Yep, thanks.
Further respond to that, we'd have to be careful, council would need to be careful about doing an inverse condemnation potential action against this property. If you were to, well, no, what would happen is, in essence, it would sort of be like that versus if council was to choose this one property and say, we're going to require parking requirements on this property only within the commercial, central business district area, that could open us up for some concern, I think, from a legal perspective. Really, ultimately, if you're wanting to change the makeup of those things, you may need to look at totally changing your central business district area. So I just wanted to throw that caveat out there if you, when it comes to parking standards within the central business district.
Sure, and I was not proposing anything that was going to be specific to one property, but as properties are redeveloped, we could craft something to where when redevelopment happens, that requirement could take effect. So it could apply to more than one property in the central business district. But I heard that that's possible. Thanks.
Rick and then Joel.
There's been a broad spectrum of ideas that have been expressed here this morning, and I think a lot of them are valid, but I'm really uncomfortable. We do not own the property when we're focusing on the town center. And to me, we need to be invited by the owner, Travis, to sit down and present our ideas. He, as an owner, whether it's him or somebody else, needs to welcome the city council or a committee to do that. So I'm a little sensitive there that we're having this discussion, and yet we need to be invited. Thank you.
Joel?
I think it's a really pertinent topic that's ripe for discussion. And honestly, I think it's going to be ripe for a decision once all the facts are out. When I look at Roseburg, when I look at Coos Bay, when I look at Medford, they didn't do this strategic planning like this, and their downtowns are suffering. I think Roseburg has several businesses that were demolished, and they're just vacant lots. We've all been to Medford. Coos Bay, it also had the decline of the timber industry, or the public timber industry. It still has the private timber industry. But their downtown area has suffered as well. And then I look in contrast to other areas that urban renewal funds, like Florence, like Sherwood, right along the railroad tracks, like Bend. They have Ashland, they have a vital downtown. So we got a great resource in the historic district, and I think that we need to be strategic in how we manage it for the future. And I think there's some opportunities. Parking is going to be essential. I think partnerships with the private sector is going to be essential. I don't know of any city as it's growing that doesn't have municipal city parking lots in their downtown commercial area. Medford's got a parking garage. Ashland's got a parking garage. Grants Pass has a few lots. The other thing is putting a vision out there. Kurt talked about a mall. That's one option. Another option, we move Saturday morning market to a central location. We have it with water features. We have it with maybe a fireplace next to the Chamber of Commerce building and the new hotel. We think about these things, and that we plan to make those happen. And now, it wouldn't bother me if the price is right for us to even purchase that and move forward with the private sector, with some requests for bids for development. Once we know what we're doing with the task force, and once we know what the citizens want, I think it's very important that I don't determine what happens, that I don't pick the projects, that we have the citizens with a consensus building that picks that. And I think that citizen input, I think they're eager to do that, and I think they're ready to do that. So that's where I'm at. If 1 is the beginning of the process, 10 is the end of the process, there's people all along the path. And there's some that are going to be at 1.5, and there's some that are going to be at 10. They may not be at the same 10, but I'm pretty far along. I'm about at a 6 in terms of where I think we need to go for the future of our town.
Thanks, Joel. We've kind of morphed here from questions for Brad into discussion, so I want to take a pause and just ask Travis, since he is here, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to talk?
Sure, I'm more than happy.
Okay, come on up. Make sure that mic is on. The button on the bottom of the mic. Thank you.
I think it's on.
Let us know what's going on.
I
Travis.
apologize for not having a mask. I didn't bring one, but if there was an extra, I'm more than happy to wear
New
that.
rule, you don't have to wear one while you're speaking, so
Okay.
you're good.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the meeting. I just, I want to share with the group, number one, I love our town. I mean, this is home for me. I care greatly about what happens in our downtown. I'm pro small business. Had Dane and I not had the opportunity to have a little push cart here in town, our business would have never taken off or been what it is today. So I'll forever be grateful to our downtown. We're the longest tenant in the plaza, believe it or not, with just the coffee bar that we've got. I am totally open to the pursuit of improving our downtown with this property. However, and I'll restate this as I've stated many times already before, that can't come at the expense of the tenants that are in there. There would be a great effort need to be made to help to relocate those small businesses. I have zero desire to leave them hanging high and dry. And there's not a lot of them, and all of that can be done if it's done well and it's planned right. I think that, the downtown area, having parking, ample parking for our merchants in the downtown is a healthy thing. I think that it's very much accurate. A lot of people that shop in our downtown corridor, go to those restaurants, park on our property. There's no question in my mind. I know that takes place. I see it happen every day. I see people park and walk over to get their mail at the post office. That happens every day. And it has for years. Yes, if I was like Dr. Evil, I could put gates and not allow anyone to park on that property, and there'd be a lot of upset people, but I'm not Dr. Evil. So I guess, as I kind of think about it, I think it's smart to have some strategy sessions that lie around it if the outcome is to make sure that you have plenty of parking long term. There's ways to go about that. There's ways to make our downtown more magnetic and attractive, utilizing this as a centerpiece. Today, the state of the property with the buildings on it, there's a lot of deferred maintenance that has not happened over the years prior to me buying it. There are improvements that need to be made. A new roof is one of them. Parking lot improvements, the asphalt is cracking. There's a lot that has to be invested if it's to live on the way that it is. And if it was to live on the way that it is, there would be certainly preferential treatment given to the people that would be tenants in that plaza with parking. And there are ways for that to be done in the most qualitative way. The amount of money it would take to improve the buildings with new roof, with new asphalt, with cosmetic improvements that make it more attractive, that would, you know, it would be an investment that would come through rents or leases long-term. Today, there are month-to-month rents. And without knowing what the total investment would be, that would need to be factored into those rents and improvements to be made. And then parking being a premium, there would be possibly a way for people to come in, park, get validated. Maybe it's paid parking. It's just one idea. And if you frequent and you shop within the plaza, it would be free. There's maybe a way for that to occur with the downtown business district. I think there's many ways that this property could be of value. If there's nothing there, yes, it could be sold at some point. My intent certainly was to improve it. It was to help not just with our infrastructure and headquarters needs with Dutch, but to make it much more new, attractive, magnetic to our downtown. And our plan has shifted. We are not going to build a future headquarters there. That's something that I stated some time ago. All that being said, I do think that you could do something really cool there. And if it's done well and it's done right, and people are put in a place where creative ideas can flow, innovative ideas could be pursued, and people can work together to achieve an outcome, then I think it's something that's worthy of exploration. But it cannot come, again, at the expense of the tenants that are there, the futsal center that's there. Those pieces would have to be relocated, and they would be part of, I would think, the investment in doing such. So I'm open for questions if you guys have questions.
Do you have any questions for Travis? Valerie?
Yes, I just want to know, so the football academy is a long-term, and that's where you want it to be. So I'm just thinking of all of those sorts of things and getting that from you, because that would indeed be factored in.
I think there's flexibility there. There is 2 buildings. The futsal academy is one of them, and then the rest of the tenants are another building. So there are 2 buildings there, and it doesn't appear to the naked eye that it's 2 buildings, but it is. And I believe they're 20,000 square feet apiece. So,
okay.
it just depends on what the plan would be and what it would look like, and if there was, what the outcome is. If it was a park, that comes with pros and cons, right? If it's just parking, that comes with pros and cons. If it's leaving it alone or taking one of the buildings out, there's pros and cons, but all of that needs to be pursued and thought out.
Okay, thank you. And you're mentioning that there's 2 buildings. I'm just going to ask Jason, is that where the sewer runs, just between those 2 buildings, or no, is that in a different place? Because I do know there's a sewer that runs underneath that. Is that under one of the buildings, or how does that work?
It does run under one of the buildings. I don't know exactly which one. It looks like it's the one on the western side.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, thanks for coming today, Travis. I appreciate it. So
Absolutely.
would you be, do you have a desire to be part of any kind of think tank or task force that would be discussing all the possibilities? Because it seems as though, as much as anybody, and maybe more than anybody downtown, you've probably got a lot of good ideas as to what, how we can improve things. So would you be willing to be part of that if it was going to meet on a monthly basis or something like that?
Well, I guess possibly. The last thing that I want to do is be put in a position where it's a conflict of interest. So I'm very hesitant to commit to anything outside of, I'm totally open for the city to explore this as a potential project. And I just want to restate again, I mean, it has to be for the greater good of downtown and the tenants specifically involved in it.
So possibly then, I get that, and it didn't occur to me until you just said it. So possibly if there was a task force that on occasion, or at some of the meetings, would bring you in just for your comment, you're not a member of the task force, but they could rely on getting some input from you on a regular basis if they needed it.
Yeah, I think you know, with the sale of it being that then it's owned by me and my family, and it's not just me solely, but I do represent the family. It would be something that I think we'd have to feel really good about if there was a sale to be had or a plan to be put forward. Maybe we were to retain ownership. I'm not sure. I've heard many different views, and I think there's a lot of ways to go about this, but we're open to the ideas. We're open to what's best for downtown Grants Pass.
I guess, you know, because it's clear, yeah, you made that really clear, and I appreciate that, and that's awesome. So since, in a certain sense, you and your family would have, we'll say, veto power over the sale, in other words, if you didn't like the plan, or you thought things were moving in the wrong direction, you know, you'd be like, well, you know, your family might decide, gee, we don't even want to sell this because we don't like the direction it's going to move. So I guess, just to be clear, you'd be willing to, at least at some of the meetings, come in and just give your opinion as the property owner, even if you're not on that task force, because we can only move so far in any given direction without you thinking it's a reasonable idea.
Yeah, and you know, I think that there's a timeline here that's important probably for us to entertain, where we've either got to commit to putting some sort of plan together or not, because the building and the improvements that need to be made there themselves, I think maybe have a year of deferred, you know, before something needs to take place. And then we've got to decide, A, are we going to make those improvements and stay as owners? Or are we going to sell the property? Or is the city going to look at a plan here that makes sense? And, you know, it's already been, I think, what, 11 months or so? There's conversations that I've had with many different people. And I just think that we should probably have a timeline that we look at as far as, like, is this really truly an important priority to the city or not?
Travis, is it your family that owns it or Dutch Bros?
What's that?
Is it your family that owns it or Dutch Bros?
It's my family, yes.
Okay, so it's Boardsma property anyway?
Yes, it is.
So just to clarify one thing you said, it would be acceptable use of the urban renewal funds for the city to provide you know, as the developer and property owner, funding to help with your own project. And that might even be the preference of the council. So it's not a requirement in any way that the city would have to own the property. So just so you know that going in. I know, Rick, you have a question, but just to keep everybody on track too, I think, you know, it sounds like he is pretty open to working with us. So just keep our focus on, you know, how we want to go about next step and not get into too much detail on this specific property. Rick and then Joel.
Thank you, Travis, for coming. Rob basically answered or put forward the questions I had for you. And I also agree that no matter what project we have, there has to be a timeline so things don't just get shelved and not move forward. So appreciate your comments again. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Joel.
Travis, I wanted to confirm one thing. I think I heard from you that something's going to happen within a year just because of the deferred maintenance. Something's going to happen. It's either going to continue to deteriorate beyond economic feasibility, or it's going to be demolished, or there's going to be additional investment in that maybe you, maybe not you. That you'd be willing to work with the city. I also heard that with urban renewal funds. The other thing is, are you open to sell it at a fair market price to the city?
Yes, I'm open to a sale. Again, however, that has to be predicated on, treating those tenants appropriately.
Right. So those tenants and their leases, how many tenants do you have now?
Oh, shoot, I don't know off the top of my head how many we have, but let's just call it, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 at any given time.
Okay, and have they decreased in number over the last year?
Well, some come and go, and it's, I think as you look at it, I mean, it's a shopping plaza, so you've got, that's the nature of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions right now? DJ, do you have any questions? Guess not, he may have stepped away. All right, thank you, Travis.
All right, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, council. So, Valerie?
Well, it seems to me that this is a time to move forward with some sort of a task force and include some downtown people and some counselors and interested citizens to get on it. Because that's what I'm hearing from Travis, is we're either going to invest in the building and do it, or we need to know what we're going to do. So based upon that conversation, my move would be to put together a task force to look at it and come up with some creative ideas.
All right, Brian?
So I'm pretty hesitant on this overall. The plaza is a fully functioning center of commerce right now. It's not derelict, it's not abandoned. It sees business, it's in the center of downtown, it has a great location. So I am very, very hesitant for council to start playing developer on this project when we can't even develop the Chevron station across the street that we bought. It's just a gravel lot. So I am very, very hesitant to, I don't want to say waste our time on this, but I feel like putting too much time into this is going to sideline us making progress on other urban renewal items, because all the effort's going to be going towards this, and then all the other urban renewal projects are just going to get essentially sidelined until we work through this process, I feel like. And as far as the priorities of council, I mean, we've got some really big issues that we need to tackle before we go trying to, buy a shopping center or develop something that's already a fully functioning building. I just see this being a low priority for us, and I see other things that are much higher on the list, even in urban renewal, honestly. So I'm pretty hesitant to spend a lot of time and effort on this right now.
Rick?
I see the importance of maintaining a schedule, especially when Travis indicated a year from now, serious decisions need to be made as to whether the current facility is upgraded or what direction it has. And since he's open to input, I think basically we can just be a guidance for a committee. I mean, the city per se doesn't have to be the developer. We can just bring people together to say what type of development they would like to see there and bring input on board. And so whether it is Travis or somebody else in the future, if they already know they have that plan and they like the plan, they can move forward, and that in itself is worth a lot. So I would be in favor of proceeding with the task force. Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, I would second that also, Rick, for several different reasons. One is I would hope that if we had a task force, that there could be representatives of the development community on the task force, and they could let the city know what they would need from the city to make a deal reasonable and viable for them. Whether it's tax abatement as an incentive, whether it's whatever it is as an incentive, what they would need from the city. I would never want to, as Brian says, it's too big of a project for the city to develop that, I think. But to work with a developer, find out what their needs are and help that along, I think that actually could be our job in a major way. And I think that would be that's part of the definition of urban renewal. And if not, if let's just say we put some time into a task force and it really doesn't seem to be bearing fruit or moving towards any conclusion, then at least we could cross that off our list as something that isn't going to happen. But I'd like to know one way or the other, either we can help, we can listen to the task force, listen to the development community, see if there's anything there that we can help them with to further that project, or we can find out that this is just not something that we can handle. But one way or the other, I'd like to have a little bit more, move towards a decision on that, and I think the decision is creating a task force and listening to stakeholders and any developers that might want to come to those meetings for their ideas.
Thank you. Joel, then.
So I remember earlier a discussion on urban renewal where we didn't want to piecemeal things. And we wanted something that was substantial and would make a difference. And I think this will. We have to be together in it. We have to have a vision. The task force can provide that to us. I'm not going to provide it to them, and none of us have that power. But the task force can give us back that. If we form a task force, there's, just like with the climate change, I think there's some things that need to be given to the task force in terms of our expectations. One of the expectations is, does the city buy it or does it not? And that may be an easy decision, it may not be, but we need their recommendation back to us on that. And then what type of parking for our downtown area, and what does the future look like for that, and how does this play into that? I think that's a very important question, and there's different ways that could be handled. I think the task force needs to give us that back. And then 20 years from now, what does Caveman Plaza look like? And then what are the incremental steps to get there? What does it look like 20 years from now, and what are the incremental steps to get there?
Rob.
Yeah, I think that we need to move forward with the task force, decide to move forward with the task force to have ideas percolate, or we just need to kill it, you know, and because it's not going to move forward if we don't discuss it and we don't get stakeholder input. So we can either kill it today or move forward with the staff, with a task force.
Okay, well, 4 of you have already spoken up with interest in the task force, and I know that DJ was behind it as well. It was partly his idea, so that makes at least 5. I guess the question at this point is whether the task force would focus specifically on this one project, or whether it might also include other URA projects. Rick?
I think if you have talented people on that task force, it would be advantageous to view the entire urban area that's involved for renewal and to look at different projects. So I think if you have the people on board to make that review and provide input, I think it would be a real advantage to include other aspects around the town. Thank you.
Joel?
I would take a little different approach. I would try to keep it focused, and then they're smart people, and there's always been lists that come up that's outside the scope of what we've given them and what we want back. We want at least that back. If there's some other things that are outside the scope, one-way street or a hotel or whatever it is, you capture that on a bin list, and you capture the rationale for that, and you bring that back to the council. But I don't want to diffuse the focus so that we don't get what we want.
Okay. Valerie?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that if you give them too much, I think the whole purpose is to be focused within that year, give him that. And I think there will be side discussions that come up, but I think the focus should be just on that Caveman Plaza area at this point in time.
Rob?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Even if this task force was to be a URA general task force, I would want their first focus or their first task to be this, whether that's 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, whatever that takes. And then we can move on after we get their first recommendation on this property. But it could be the same group potentially, but this has to be the first thing that they focus on, I feel, because of the time constraints that Travis is talking about. If he has to maintain that property, it's just going to go on to the sale price to, and it makes no sense to maintain a building that the next developer might want to knock down. So that's all stuff that really needs to be worked on right away, I think, or meaning in the next year. So I'd like to have them focus on this first, even if it's a general task force that moves on to other things afterwards.
Okay. So focus on this project at least first, and then maybe it would morph into more. Joel had listed some questions. He would be interested in whether or not the city should buy it, how this property impacts parking, and 20 years from now, what does the plaza look like, and what does it take to get there? Are you in agreement about those? Are there other things you want to add to the list? Valerie?
I guess I would hope that they could, look at the enterprise possibilities, the urban renewal possibilities, and kind of go in depth on those as well as to how those could be utilized for this project.
Okay, so how to use the funding sources?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? All right, timeline. Basically how to use, how the enterprise funding and URA funding could be used in relationship to this project. Oh, you want the other items too? Okay, well the first one was just whether or not the city should buy or would be interested in buying it, yes or no. How the property influences parking or how it impacts parking downtown. 20 years from now, what does the plaza look like and what does it take to get there? And then now Valerie has added discussion about the funding sources.
So I guess 20 years from now means ideas, multiple ideas as to what it could look like in 20 years. Yeah, I like that.
Suppose that would encompass, whether or not the building should stay or go, that sort of thing.
Right.
All right, so 6 months?
The other thing, Sarah, and I say this hesitantly, but hopefully modestly, I have some skills in achieving consensus, like with the swimming pool. If you want me to work with the group and facilitate the answer to those questions, and it doesn't make any difference, my opinion would stay out of it, but I could get it done for you in 6 months.
Okay, 6 months seem like a reasonable timeline to people? Okay, thanks, Joel. And then ideas for who should be on it?
Downtown tenants, some of the tenants, I think having tenants, interested tenants, and other people downtown. I think going out to the people downtown is big.
So downtown businesses? Rick?
I think for a broader spectrum too, you might want to look at somebody from the county, Chamber of Commerce, a real estate person, also a person that is a developer of sorts.
Other ideas? Joel?
I'd like to see a housewife.
Thank you. Nobody ever wants a housewife, but
Or a house husband.
Or a house husband.
I want one of those too. All right. Anything further? Brian?
Yeah, I'm just curious, is this going to be open to the public? Are counselors going to be able to attend in a listening capacity, or are these going to be closed meetings?
Rick?
I guess I would be in favor of a counselor volunteering, being a liaison possibly, and that also the owner as well.
How do we usually handle the paves as far as public or not public?
Yeah, so the PAVE meetings themselves have been in the past more of an internal, just staff meeting, but those are PAVEs in nature. They can be open to the public. If this is a task force and you're claiming and you're titling it as a task force, I would say you would appoint a council liaison, which would be Joel, it sounds like, Councilor King. You would have members of the public that would be there. It would be a public meeting because it is a task force. It's making policy recommendations to you, and it'd be an opportunity for the public to participate, provide input, etc. So if you treated it just like a normal, regular task force.
So
I agree with, this is Mark, I agree with Aaron. If it's a task force that's going to be making a formal recommendation to council, then it should be a public meeting.
okay.
It doesn't have to be a public hearing, so whether or not the public gets to participate, come give testimony is discretionary, but the public has a right, should have a right to at least witness the discussions.
Okay. All right. Joel?
I think the pool committee was a good example. We had the public open to that, counselors could come, there was a public comment period at the beginning, and then they could observe what was going on, and it was open to everyone. It needs to be very transparent.
Okay. I think one thing that did not happen with the pool is to have a public forum of some sort, which it seems like, it would be a good opportunity to bring the public, really into the process if you're going to dream about what something could be. So personally, I think that would be good for at least one meeting to include that. Valerie?
Well, seeing as it is the 22nd and we're having discussion, and on November 30th we're having an Urban Renewal Agency Community Forum, it might be just a good time to introduce that at that forum, that's what we're doing, so people are aware and know that that's coming forward, so that they can know that there will be public comment accepted at those meetings.
Okay. Joel?
I'd also be open if another counselor wanted to assist me. One of the things that I've learned is diversity in leadership is really important. I'm a male, and I'm an old male. If we could have a young person of the opposite sex that would step forward, not that I want to be prejudiced or anything, but that would be very helpful.
I had originally envisioned actually 3 or 4 council members being on this, so I don't know if that's something you all are thinking or whether it should just be purely outsiders. Up to you. Valerie?
It's been my experience that people who are interested will just come. I mean, I think that's just the openness of it. It's just that you can, as a counselor, come if you are interested in what's going on. I sometimes go to other meetings. I've been known for that, and I've never felt that's a bad thing to do. So
you're thinking of having it be a committee of others that then council members could watch, but not having it set up like a PAVE, which is half public, half council?
Yes, that's kind of how I envision it.
Okay, do other councilors agree? Rob?
The 2 times I've been on the charter task force, it's probably been 50-50 counselors and outside citizens, and I think it actually worked pretty well. I think the first time, 2012 was it? I'm not sure. 2012, in addition, having public comment as a possibility at every meeting was really good. I think some of the public actually brought ideas in that, quite frankly, were unique in the room and were important. I also saw that in the first parking task force, and 14, I think it was, there was definitely people who came in from just the general public for maybe one meeting and commented, and it was really positive. But that also was, I guess that one was more public than sitting at the table than counselors. But I would volunteer to be on that board with Joel, even though I don't necessarily meet the possible gender requirements or age requirements. But I would, I'd like to be on that also, but we really need to, I think, we really need to open up and make sure that the development community knows that these discussions are happening and that we really want their input, because we're going to need, probably, if we're going to move forward on it anyway, it's probably going to be some developer that wants to really take the lead on it with the city's help. So I'd like to really make it clear to the development community that this is what we're looking for.
All right, other thoughts on how many counselors should be on it? Joel?
One of the things that I value is, I don't like to call ourselves politicians, but that's what we are, and we like to talk. And we're going to have our say on this subject when it comes back to us. And there's only so much time when you're in a subcommittee for people to talk. And I would like to maximize that input from citizens, recognizing that counselors are going to have the final say. And so I don't want to overwhelm or have a lot of counselors on the committee at the expense of the citizens giving input. Recognizing that they're sure welcome to come, they're welcome for public comment, and they'll have the final say.
Brian?
Yeah, I agree with Joel on that. I think if counselors want to attend the meetings as a member of the audience, and if the chair is gracious enough to allow them to make comment if they raise their hand, I think that's plenty. I think that we should get outside input on this.
All right, y'all are still kind of split on, Rick just puts his thumb up at everything, so. Kurt?
Well, I've already warned Joel that I'm going to be there, so I think the horse is dead. Let's stop kicking. As we used to say in the pool room, let's stop talking and start chalking. So let's do the committee.
Well, we are doing the committee. I think the only question at this point is how many counselors we're putting on it. And a couple people have spoken up and said that they think that it should be, you know, Rob mentioned maybe even 50-50. But
as I said, I'm going to be there anyway, so one's fine.
okay, one council member on the committee. Apparently Joel spoke first, so I guess he gets to do it. Rob?
Okay, I was going to suggest, but it's, if one is what it is, then that'll be what it is. I don't know who from downtown will apply or want to be there, or whether or not they've been downtown for a while, have perspective, or maybe it doesn't need to be. Maybe they just need vision for the future. But I have been downtown for coming up on 27 years, and I just wanted to make sure that a reasonable view from a downtown business person was included as part of this. It'd be great if downtown property owners were on there too, but again, we can't force anybody to apply. But that is the reason that I wanted to be on there. But I can also go when so moved and just speak if I'm allowed time to speak. But I just want to make sure that there was good input from, or put it this way, valid input from downtown, and that's why I would want to be there as a counselor. But whatever we decide is fine.
Valerie?
Well, I'm just going to say what I feel is I don't want to overwhelm a task force with city council people. I think that we can go and come, we could be the public, but ultimately, as Joel said, it's going to come back to us. People already said, yes, we want somebody from downtown, and if there aren't people that coming to the plate, you know, well, Rob, you may be the one, but I really think that if you're going for a task force and you're trying to get ideas from out there, that, as Joel said, sometimes we talk too much and people feel a little intimidated by having people politicians there. So I would like to keep it fewer counselors, just one, and then have the opportunity open for us to come in as a public if we want to add or just hear what they have to say.
Okay. I think, all right, I thought we were ready to move on. What's up, guys? Joel?
It is a historic district, so it's actually outside the historic district, but it greatly affects the historic district, so we need to have somebody that can represent that viewpoint, I think, on the council or on the committee.
Thanks, Rick.
I like the idea of a smaller core group of people, and as already been stated, it's open to the public, the counselors can attend, but also the people downtown that are merchants can attend it, even if they're not on the committee. But I think if you're looking for a more concise, efficient running group, just having a core group that represents different aspects is probably going to get it to move forward and be a more organized meeting. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I think we've put together enough that staff can at least kind of draft a framework, and then obviously you're going to have to all agree on it one more time before we really move forward with anything. But are we done with that discussion now? All right, thank you. Next up, Dollar Mountain County property. Thanks for being here today, Travis.
All right, Dollar Mountain parcels. I'm going to kind of summarize the conversations that have taken place since your last meeting on this, and then turn it over to you, Mayor, Council, to decide where you might want to go with a couple of these parcels that are up there. So the purpose of this is to give the council an update on these citizen advisory group recommendations about the Josephine County land auction for $2 Mountain parcels. And this supports council's goal to maintain, operate, and expand infrastructure, as well as ensure park infrastructure needs are met. So in late October, council was informed, as you know, about Josephine County public sale of real property. It included 2 parcels of land that are adjacent to that Dollar Mountain complex. And on November 1st, the council requested feedback from 3 committees: Bikeways and Walkways, Parks Advisory, and the Dollar Mountain Core Planning Team. So these 3 groups met on the dates shown on the slide here, November 9th. 2 of them were held. And then the Dollar Mountain Core Planning Team met on November 17th. There is a draft plan for the Dollar Mountain Trail System, and the next couple of slides actually come from that. This work was done as a result of the Core Planning Committee that had been meeting for about a year and a half or so. And this vision statement comes out of that draft document that they put together. A 20-plus mile non-motorized trail system for hikers and mountain bikers that is purpose-built, designed to be fun to hike and ride, enjoyed by area residents, and serves to draw visitors to the area and increase tourism expenditures. And I wanted to include that in there mainly just as you're talking about the results of these committees and their recommendations, just kind of a connection to what the vision is. And then these are 4 goals that are in that same document to, basically function as a trail park for local groups, local residents, serve as tourism economic development opportunity, develop partnerships for management and maintenance of the trail system, and then reduce current unwanted activities. You've seen this a few times. This is just a map showing the ownership of the property. Josephine County in orange, BLM in the yellow, and the city's 440 acres or so in the blue. And then this is a different way of presenting that information. Council has seen this before, showing in gold there the 2 Josephine County parcels that are currently open in the auction. in the southeast corner and in the northwest corner. And then this map just overlays the trail system concept over the top of that ownership map, showing that just in a little different. This area, this arrow here in the southeast, pointing to the about 29-acre parcel, landlocked, does have the current trail that does go through a portion of it. And then the other parcel up here in the north, those are the two parcels that are open for auction. And here's just a little more detail on that. That auction does go through December 1st, and bids have to be received by 4 o'clock on November 30th. The Plumtree Pinecrest Drive parcel up in the north, that has the minimum bid price of $92,000 with a real market value of $164,040. And then the one in the southeast corner off Northwest B and Crescent, that's got the asking minimum bid of $70,000, real market $9,850. Just to zoom in on that piece in the southeast, both of them have woodlot resource zoning on them, which does require a permit in order to have a recreational trail on it, which we're currently working on. So these next two slides just kind of summarize what the three committees talked about. Kind of at a high level, there was definitely broad support to secure the 29.75 acre parcel. We didn't hear anyone say do not do that, but there was a lot of caveats from these three groups in saying to yes, pursue it. Some of the reasons that the committees supported pursuing it is that it is integral and has a high value to that overall trail network. As that other map showed, it has a key segment of the existing trail already on a portion of it. It would be costly to reroute that trail coming from the Crescent Drive and going up to the telecommunications tower up to the top of the Dollar Mountain. One of the members of the Dollar Mountain committee just did a really rough back of the napkin sketch, and he thought it would be $100,000 to $130,000 to reroute that. So if it was not part of the trail system, that's what he was thinking. And then finally, the trail does offer a quality recreational experience now. So even separate from the overall Dollar Mountain plan, there was comments. Well, it's offering a great service now to people who want to hike. There wasn't support to pay that minimum bid price of $70,000. It's viewed as overpriced by many of the committee members. Several people saw value at paying at or slightly above market value, but of course the minimum bid price is listed at $70,000. Just a few more comments. At a minimum, the city should pursue a recreational easement over the trail. That doesn't exist, and even if it wasn't purchased by the city or a bid put in, there was some support to proceed with at least ensuring that pedestrian access is legal across that trail over the Josephine County property. The Bureau of Land Management, sorry, I forgot to spell that one out. Their field director was a part of the Dollar Mountain Committee call, and he did make the comment that they would seriously consider a request to grant road access to the county's landlocked property. This is something that I've seen a lot over the years as well. If property, is surrounded by BLM property, that's just kind of baked into their DNA, if you will, that they just work with people. It doesn't mean they will grant the permit, but they certainly have a history of working to provide that access if it's necessary across BLM property. And then finally, there really wasn't any one who stepped up and said, yeah, let's pursue that Pinecrest property up in the northwest. The trail is shown on a portion of it now, but that could pretty easily be rerouted. And so that was a consensus from the group as well. So the call to action is there. The bid deadline's coming up next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And the alternatives, you could move this topic for further discussion, but that would basically mean next Monday. Direct staff to submit a formal bid or take no action at this time. Reassess the property and trailism after the bid opening is done, just to kind of see what's the result. If there are no bids, where does the county want to go with it from there? So.
Thanks, Brad.
Yep.
Are there any questions for Brad? Rick?
So Brad, as you know, there's a landlocked piece of property in the state of Oregon. I believe there's an ORS that allows the applicant to proceed in court, or I'm not sure the exact official procedure, but an opportunity to acquire access that, so even if they're landlocked now, they can still proceed, and Mark could probably edify on this better, proceed in some legal manner to acquire access. Not that that's going to happen or somebody wants to spend the time or money to do it. The other aspect, I was wondering, since that's an existing trail, is there any rights that go with that trail, such as adverse possession or anything like that? I don't know if that rule could apply there or not, and I don't know if Mark would have input on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer a couple things you mentioned. So if someone is landlocked, then at the end of the day, ultimately, they can acquire access over properties that are in between their property and a public road. That is called an easement by necessity, also called a way of necessity. It's actually a very expensive process by which the person seeking the way of necessity has to pay the attorney fees for the properties over which the way of necessity would be located, and they also have to demonstrate that that is that they have no other possible means of access. So it's a pretty arduous and expensive way to procure access. As for what you're saying is, I think you were kind of touching on the idea of like historic use. You said adverse possession. A related concept would be a prescriptive easement, and that's in a 10,000 foot view type explanation is when you acquire a right to use property just based on the fact that you've been using it over time, but you cannot acquire adverse possession or a prescriptive easement over the government. So to the extent any properties we're talking about owned by the county or city, nobody could successfully assert adverse possession or prescriptive easement over those properties.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Valerie?
I have a question as to who's on the third committee, the design committee, I guess it was. What is the design committee made up? Who is it made up of?
The Dollar Mountain Core Planning Team, yeah, that's facilitated by Dan Miller. He is a kind of a community recreation planner who works for the National Park Service, and he was brought under contract a couple of years ago to kind of help, facilitate. He's worked in many communities across the West to kind of help, guide them through the planning phase for recreational type projects like this. So he's been kind of the facilitator. Josephine County has a couple of people on it from their public works department, as well as somebody from their real estate division. There's also a couple of Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association, Chad Thorson, who's also on Parks Advisory Committee, he's on there. There's a number of others. There's a couple of landowners who are on there. So it's an eclectic group that, you know, like I said, hadn't met for a while. Wendy Giordano was kind of co-facilitating that before she left. Okay. So she had been a part of that committee as well.
I mean, and I'm just curious, because there are Josephine County people who were on board, so was their recommendation any different than our own committees?
We did not hear from the Josephine County representatives that are on the Dollar Mountain Core Planning team at that meeting. So I don't know. They didn't give any input.
Okay, so the BLM was there. It sounded like, because you talked about them saying that they often give easements. So BLM was there and the city was there, but the county wasn't, there wasn't any representation there?
They actually did, yeah. Eric Kiesacker, representing their Public Works Department, was there.
Okay. But didn't give any particular recommendations, just listened, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I also have a question about the possibility of the recreational easement. Is that something that could be pursued before? Obviously, I think this Tuesday, the 23rd, there's a city-county meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that something that could be brought up there before it goes on the block?
You know, I haven't been participating in those, so I would look to the city manager or the mayor.
Yeah, but we are there. I don't know for sure whether it's on the agenda, but we can certainly bring it up if you have any questions about it.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing and getting their take, because it was my understanding. I always thought Darren Fowler was always very supportive of the Dollar Mountain property and that sort of thing. And I know being on the, I know he's the liaison for the Destination and Marketing Organization, and I know, you know, they weren't brought in for this discussion, but I do know that Dollar Mountain is a big part of their promotion of Southern Oregon as a outdoor recreational area. So I personally think that it should be discussed at Tuesday's meeting.
And if I could, I neglected to say that Bob Hackett, who is the new Travel Southern Oregon Executive Director, was on the call and did, you know, voice a lot of support.
Okay, and
as well as Tori.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was at a meeting on Friday, and I know that she's very supportive and working with Southern Oregon to try to make this outside recreation management area as part of her tourism.
Other questions for Brad?
Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, yes, this is officially on the agenda for tomorrow. So, Council, I guess if you have any questions you want to ask, or you want me to ask of the county, we can do that. We have until next Monday for us to make a decision on what we want to do. So what are you thinking? Brian?
Well, in the presentation, basically I heard that there wasn't really any support for us to pay the minimum bid price from the committees. So I'm in agreement with that. I think it's wildly overpriced. I personally don't think it's going to get any bids. And my personal thought is just after it doesn't get any bids, we just circle back around with the county and see if we can do some negotiating to, at minimum, secure the trail easement. Because honestly, that's all we really need. The rest of that land is so steep. You know, if we could secure the easement there, and you know, if we could even secure an easement on that northwest property that would give access to the Pinecrest area, I think that would be good too. Just to make it a more robust trail system as it develops.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Nobody has any thoughts on this? Rob?
Yeah, I agree with what Brian just said. And it's clear that there's really nobody involved in the city in any capacity that feels that we should make a bid of 70,000. So, but to attempt afterwards, assuming it's still owned by the county, would make a lot of sense. To ask questions at the meeting tomorrow, of course, I would definitely support you guys doing that as well. Yeah.
Okay, is there anything specific anybody wants asked? Brian?
Well, I think if we're going to make an ask, we should probably ask for them to, if they're willing to grant easements on those lots for us, just access easements or trail easements. And in order to do that before the auction, they would probably just have to pull it from their auction this round, which I know that they've done that with other properties before. As things come up, properties get pulled from auction, so it's not out of the question for that to happen. They could simply just relist it on their next auction. So that would seem like a good ask to me.
Rob?
I guess the very first thing you got to ask, and kind of goes along with what Valerie was saying, is I would ask, Commissioner Fowler and of course the whole board, do they feel that Dollar Mountain is a plus, is good for the area's tourism and quality of life? And if they do feel that way, would they support the trail going through that, continuing to go through their property? You would hope that the answer to those two things is yes, and at which point maybe they would give us an easement. But it has to be clear that they're on board with the fact that it's a positive for the community.
Okay. Joel?
Well, and I would second both Brian and Rob's comments. And I personally would approach him with, we need a partner up here to make this more successful, even more successful. And we would hope that you would join us in that partnership and withdraw that one 9,000 acre or $9,000 parcel from the sale and keep it for a joint partnership with the city for the benefit of everyone.
Okay. Anything further on that? All right. Next up, discussion on airport funding. And I guess we will put Dollar Mountain on our Monday agenda so that we can follow up with the council and make a decision next week.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is a topic that Council wanted to revisit about the airport funding. And it's reconsideration of resolution number 21-7045 regarding the funding of the Grants Pass Airport runway. And the relationship to the council goals is to provide cooperative shared leadership involving council staff and community, and also encourage economic opportunities. So the current work plan identifies the following goal under encourage economic opportunities, which is to explore partnership opportunities to enhance the Grants Pass Airport. And that was considered a complete work plan. So the Josephine County Airport Department is managing several state and federal grants totaling over $7 million. And for every dollar invested, they need to get a 10% match. And so there was a couple of presentations where the airport manager at the time came and spoke with council and provided some handouts of how many businesses the airport serves and the economic opportunities that it provides. Josephine County has committed $150,000 per year from their lottery dollars over the next 5 years for a grant match of $750,000. And on May 19th of 2021, the City Council approved the resolution that committed $43,750 per year for the next 4 years for a total contribution of $175,000 for a runway extension. The city's first annual contribution was paid in June of this year. The CEDC also made a motion back in January of 2020 to consider the supporting of the supportive funding. So the total amount of Federal American Rescue Plan Act that Josephine County is receiving is over $16 million. And per the finance director at the county, a substantial amount of approximately 30% of ARPA funds is going to airport improvements. And a vote for authorizing the ARPA funding for the airport improvements is scheduled to be heard by the County Board of Commissioners this coming Wednesday, the 24th. The revenue source that was identified for this resolution for the city to make its payments is coming from the Industrial and Downtown Loan Fund, which has a current total balance of $650,000. And the cost implication is shown there. Over a 4-year period, it would be a total of $175 that the city would be contributing for this airport 10% match. So the call to action today is at your discretion, and for discussion, the alternatives are to continue to support the resolution that was approved in May, to amend the resolution, or to rescind the resolution.
Thanks, Susan. Council, do you have any questions? Valerie?
Yes, Susan, thank you for presenting. I just had a question about the $175,000 that we have committed goes along with the $750,000 that the county has committed, and that is the 10% match, because it's my understanding that the FAA actually pays 90% of it, correct? So they're just asking for the 10% commitment on our part, and that was part of that commitment, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick?
Valerie asked one question. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Vanessa, then Brighton.
Susan, can you detail how that industrial development fund has previously been used by the city?
We've used that for the system development charge grant that we currently have, and also the business retention and expansion grant that we have. So it has been utilized for several grants for economic development.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. So per the county finance director, approximately 30% of the ARPA funds are expected to be allocated for airport improvements. Do we have any further detail as far as, I mean, that's over $5 million of their ARPA funds. So I'm just curious if we have any more breakdown as far as specifics that they're planning on using that on.
I don't have the specifics in front of me. I know that it's for both of the airports, though. There's the Illinois Valley Airport and the Grants Pass Airport, and I think there's water suppression. There's other improvements that are needed besides the extension of the runway.
Yeah, some of the discussion they've had is, just like Susan said, they're looking at trying to get water out there to the airport, and what kind of infrastructure would be required to do that, and that you'd be talking about the extension of city water out there. They are also talking about some other improvements that would help the airport be more marketable and more of a business out there for the fixed base operator, the FBO, for instance. I think there's been discussions about fuel sales and what type of infrastructure might be needed in order to do some improvements there. So on-site improvements and along with infrastructure improvements to help facilitate the growth of the airport.
Okay, is that list of improvements public? Is that something that is accessible, or is that confidential at this point?
No.
They have had a number of those discussions in executive session when they made recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. So where they are with that, I'm not sure if those are now public documents since they've been forwarded for the Board of Commissioners for their approval. So,
okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Susan. All right, council discussion on this? Valerie?
Well, being on this journey, because I have been involved with the CEGC and involved all the way through, I personally am opposed to making any sort of changes. Part of the FAA approval of moving forward takes community engagement and takes people in the community, which means the county, which obviously has given quite a bit more than we have, and the city. And we do have a number of businesses within the city that do use that airport. I will also tell you from my experience with economic development that increasing our runway by the 1,500 foot, which is what we would like to do, could have a tremendous impact in terms of bringing in other companies. And I think that one of the things I'll say over and over again, what this community needs is to increase our businesses and our growth, and that is exactly what an airport will do, is provide more opportunity for companies to just kind of come in, set up. In this day and age right now where so many businesses can do remote work, my son travels all over the country and remotely works. There's a lot of jobs available that you can do the remote work, and then people just kind of zip in and zip out for business meetings and that sort of thing. So I just think it's extremely important that we support our airport development.
Joel?
Are we past the question stage?
Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, I don't have a question.
Oh, this is discussion.
Okay, so for for discussion, I didn't have the correct information the first time around when we agreed to put this back up, that the county had made such a sizable investment, and I wasn't sure that was the case when we first brought this up. The size of our investment, those grant dollars came to us from the federal government. We have used them. They've been there for, I don't know, what, 10, 20 years, unused. We did use them a little bit when we had some COVID, I believe. Is that the same fund that we used and then we got reimbursed? So it did provide some relief there, and then we got reimbursed that money. But it's been sitting there from the federal government for a long time. The other thing, on Dollar Mountain, we talked about the richness of our relationship with the county. And it needs to be reciprocal, but we need to operate in good faith with them as well. And I think that keeping it the same way as we passed it originally is doing that. And I would bring that up in the conversation on, when are you having your conversation with the county commissioners?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. That we would hope that the richness of relationships there is extending across all subject matters. And we're not enemies. We're serving the same people, and we have the same goals. So I would leave it as it is.
Rick?
I also agree with Valerie and Joel for the reasons stated. I would like to just maintain the position we have, show support, and it would be a real bonus to our city if a new industry of some sort, and as Valerie said, it can be remote, were to come here and help just the employment factor and the wages in the community. Thank you.
Further discussion? Vanessa?
Yeah, my stance is the same from when we had this discussion in April and May, is that I do not support providing the funds to the county airport for a couple of reasons. The airport does have a dedicated enterprise funding source. They are receiving a significant amount of ARPA dollars that they are able to apply to the project. And it seems that this would be an extremely necessary project for them to prioritize with those funds. I would prefer to keep these, the industrial and downtown loan fund. I would prefer to keep that economic development within our city limits, and I think some of the programs that we have utilized those funds on in the past are a really great example of how we can continue to do that. This is not a recurring fund. Once it is depleted, the funds are gone. So the lifeline that the downtown and small businesses in our community were able to receive during 2020 was just that it was a lifeline. So I would like to have that buffer in there for them if it's ever needed again. And I keep hearing concerns about employers coming into our community, and I just would like to remind that employers will not come here and set up shop until we can get a handle on our housing crisis, because unfortunately their workers have nowhere to live that they can afford within their financial capabilities. The individuals at this time that are largely using the airport are actually expanding outside of our area, so I think that's really important to consider. Thank you.
Brian?
Well, Vanessa hit all the high points and even more than I was going to hit. But I do think that the airport is a county department. They have their own funding source, their own dedicated funding source, and any improvements that are done at the airport, the entities that are going to be seeing the benefits of those improvements are largely not us or the county. It's going to be the private businesses that use the airport or the other agencies that use the airport. And I haven't seen or heard an ask of any of them to contribute to the improvements at the airport, which they're certainly it's within their financial capability to do. And that wasn't asked. So I just don't see this as a responsible use of city funds. You know, it might be in our best interest to have the county parks department be, you know, much better than it is now, but I don't see us, you know, throwing money at the county parks department. So I don't understand why we're throwing money at this when it's not even under our purview. And the county received, I think, about $8 million more dollars in ARPA than we did. So for $175,000 to come from us instead of just coming from that extra $8 or $9 million in ARPA funds from them just seems a little ridiculous.
Rob?
Yeah, and one additional point that I know that I think we brought up before, but I'm going to bring it up again, is that from what realistic estimates of what I was able to ascertain, speaking with people very close to that situation, that the increased fuel sales that the county will have, the profit from the increased fuel sales will actually almost equal what we're giving them. And so basically we're improving their business model, so to speak, and we're not getting anything back for that. I mean, for us to have a percentage of those fuel sales, or just to look at the realistic fact that they're going to be making, without our help, approximately $50,000 more a year on fuel sales by extending the runway and not having people having to base over in Medford. People can base in Grants Pass. So I think that it's a real sweet deal for the county to basically take our money to essentially improve their profitability in their business, and the city doesn't get any, we'll say, hard cash or nuts and bolts back for that. So that's for me, that's a real issue, that we're basically making the county a more profitable enterprise and not really getting any dollars directly back for it.
Aaron, is this also on the agenda for tomorrow? With the county?
I'll have to check my notes and see.
Okay. Rick?
A bit of trivia, it'd be interesting to know of the planes, the private planes that are stored out at the airport, how many of those people are actually city residents and not county residents? Again, that's trivia. Thank you.
It's been presented to us. I could probably pull it up for you, Rick, and I think a good percentage of them were city.
Valerie?
I guess I'm concerned, very concerned, about the council's turn from business Because I don't think they recognize how economics works, that economics works when you bring in private industries and you do things for private industries and you get the money back and your tax base increases, and with the increase of the tax base in your community and the increase in the jobs that come in with that, that is where the money for the city operation comes from. So it scares me when I hear, you know, housing first. I will tell you, housing will not happen until our median income increases. And I have said that over and over again because that's economics. Housing does not come first. Housing is built by private industry. And when you alienate private businesses, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And that's a little bit frightening to me to see. And it's also frightening for me to see the contention that's coming between the city and the county. Because I think the purpose of the CEDC committee is it is county and city people working together for the betterment of the economy of all. We are one, and we need to look at ourselves as one and work with the county. And the more antagonism you have built, it just builds. And what you're doing is you're just bringing an antagonism that is sensed by the business community that will do nothing but drag us down. So I am very concerned with the attitude that separates us and them into the county and the city. I think that is an overlying issue that we see in national politics, we see it in everything, and I think any organization, FA or whatever, is looking for cooperation of government agencies to go forward. And this, to me, is such a small amount of money that we're putting forth in the next 5 years to promote jobs, economics, and to show that we stand behind the business in our community. That I'm very, I don't know, disillusioned by what I'm hearing.
Rob?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Valerie, and I could agree with a lot of it. I just feel the need to add that while it's unrelated, it's also related. The county putting that Dollar Mountain property for sale for $70,000 as an asking bid, you're talking about contention between the two agencies. You're talking about something that is not looking at a big picture and working together. Them putting that property up for $70,000 to me was a slap in the face to the city. So I'm not saying two wrongs make a right, but that was just outrageous. And it goes totally against what you just described.
Well, I think sometimes you have to choose to take the high road, and that is my decision.
Vanessa?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear and just address that my decision today and April and in May when I had the same stance was never coming from a place of contention. It's purely analytical. In my opinion, it just doesn't pencil out when this fund has been used for folks who pour their lives into small businesses and, you know, make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. That's really what this fund is intended for small businesses, and that's who I am a champion and an advocate for. The project that we're talking about today benefits individuals who own $10 million jets. So I think that juxtaposition is very important to point out.
Joel?
It's good discussion. What's important to me is, again, just like the town center, the vision for the future. We're growing as a city. We need an extension to the airport. Everybody would probably agree to that. Some rich people do use the airport. 20 years from now, what does that mean to the average citizen and the jobs and the low-cost housing and the opportunities here in the valley? That vision to me is much more important than and it's a small amount of money. Well, it's not a small amount of money, but it's federal dollars. It's not local tax dollars. It'll multiply itself and come back to us in the form of an increased tax base. I've learned a long time ago to put my grudges in the closet because all it does is cause me to have a divorce, and that's not good, you know? That's just not an appropriate way to live my life. So, so I'll be voting to maintain it.
Okay, well, we don't have any sort of motion on the table. We've heard from 6 of you right now with 3 on each side. And if you don't mind, I do have a conversation with the county commissioners tomorrow, so we don't need to make a decision on this today.
I don't think we can make a decision today without public input, without a public hearing.
Well, whatever we're going to do. I mean, do you have more to say on this today, or can we just kind of leave this hanging and we'll come back at it another day? Brian?
It might be worth, you know, if it comes up tomorrow, that might be a good thing. But before we move off topic, I just wanted to, I don't want Valerie to get too disenfranchised. I did pay attention in economics in college, so I do remember some of that. And the fact that you mentioned that housing's not going to improve until the median income rises, that's an opinion. My opinion is that housing isn't going to improve until council takes action and takes a leadership position. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Rick?
Mayor, in your discussion tomorrow, could you also, if it's available, get statistics on the participation or ownership of rental probably of the hangars, who rents them, whether they are county or whether they are city residents? Because I think, while we say we really don't have any attachment to the airport, I have this feeling that a significant number of those, quote, pilots live within the city limits. Thank you.
I will ask. I kind of wonder if that's hard to determine since we don't have zip codes that are limited to the city limits. We'll see if that's a statistic they have available. All right. Are we ready for agenda review? Are we still talking about this? All right. Let's move on to agenda review then. Find the right sheet here. Okay. So our next meeting will be next Monday. We have a workshop where we will interview applicants to the Urban Area Planning Commission. Do we have some applicants for that?
We have 3.
3 for one position?
Yes.
Okay. We'll interview our applicants, discuss the application process for HB 2006, get the survey results from the ARPA survey, and we have a Housing Advisory Committee motion to consider. The next Tuesday evening, there is a Urban Renewal Agency Community Forum that the council is welcome to attend, but it's especially designed for the public to attend at 6 p.m. next Tuesday to give some input on our Urban Renewal Agency. And then Wednesday, we have a public hearing to consider, it's a second reading rather, for the construction excise tax. And then we have on the consent calendar a resolution that would approve assistance to firefighters grant, make an appointment to the Urban Area Planning Commission, and an executive session on the performance evaluation of public officers. Any questions about any of that? No? All right. How about going forward? Is there anything that you want to make sure that we get on the agenda going forward? All right. Brian?
This is more of just a question, but I know that there was a meeting being scheduled for the roundtable regarding the urban campground, and I was just wondering if a date was set for that yet?
Looks like it'll be November 30th.
Okay, so that's next Tuesday.
That'd be the same time, the same day as the Urban Renewal Forum, but we're looking in the afternoon of the 30th, I think.
Okay. Alrighty. While you guys are still looking that over, I guess, if you have anything, you can bring it up, but I have one quick little thing to do here, which is that I have been making the rounds to all our committees this month. We weren't able to have our volunteer appreciation dinner in September due to COVID. So we have been giving a little thank you gift to all of our committee members instead. And I also have a little gift to give each of you to thank you for your service to the community and say that we all appreciate you. So thank you for everything that you do. And Karen is going to help me hand out some little gifts. And DJ, we will teleport yours over to you shortly. Any final items for agenda review? How about a motion to adjourn? Thanks, Valerie.
I move that we adjourn.
Second from Vanessa. Thank you. All in favor of adjourning for the day?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, have a nice Thanksgiving and we'll see you Monday.